Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the very first of this year's Children's Media Conference monthly spring seminars. Now, as we count down to the actual conference in July, we've got a number of sessions coming up on a monthly basis, covering all kinds of topics, but we'll be starting today with a timely look at production in the time of Corona. And a big thank you to all of CMC's patron sponsors who are supporting us right through the webinar season and the whole of CMC itself. Thank you to Akamar Films, to CBBC, CBeebies, CITV, Milkshake on Channel 5, NBC Universal, Nickelodeon, Pop, Strawberry Blonde TV, The L Factory, Tiny Pop, and YouTube Kids. Now, over the course of the next hour, we'll be looking at 4 different case studies on how production has managed to keep going over what has been an incredibly trying year. We've sought out 4 contrasting stories across different genres with different journeys and outcomes. We'll be looking at perseverance through huge logistical change, at how sometimes it was possible to discover new opportunities under the new circumstances. We'll be looking at how rapid development from nothing turned a company around, and we'll be looking at how production teams navigated the uncertainty of the early stages of lockdown by taking radical decisions and sticking to them. We will have Hebditch, who will talk us through how the animation company found a way to work totally remotely with Pip and Posy as a case study. We'll be talking to Chris Rogers, who will share the story of how Sky Kids FYI News had to reinvent themselves in lockdown and how the challenges forced them into new ways of working that will remain when life returns to normal. We'll also be talking to JJ Johnson from Sinking Ship, who's going to tell us why, when everyone else was stopping live action production, he decided it was a great time to make the YouTube Originals series Lockdown. And Saara Chaudry, who plays Neera in the show, will talk about what it's like filming a TV show in your own home with your family as crew. I know a little bit about that, so I'm looking forward to hearing from Saara. And finally, Vanessa Amberleigh from BBC Children's will share the story of going back to the drawing board on the CBeebies Panto and reinventing the format when it became clear that the theatre show could not go ahead. Now, if anybody watching has any questions they'd like to put to our panel today, there is an opportunity to do that in the Q&A that we will take at the end of the session. Chat is not enabled this afternoon, so for questions, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. We'll start today with the story of Pip and Posy, produced more or less entirely in lockdown by Blue Zoo Animation for Magic Light Pictures and Milkshake. Let's see some of that show right now.
Posy, Ozzy, Ozzy! Pip! Nothing beats playing with your best friend. Treasure hunt! Ready for your checkup? Arr, my hearties! That's it, Posy! Great, you got it! Even when things get a bit tricky. Posy! Oops! Watch me! Hey! But working things out... Posy, I'm so sorry. Is what makes great friends. You'd give me Piggy for tonight, so you can sleep even greater. Oh, Pip, you're just the best. Come on, let's play.
Eve, thank you for joining us in the session today. Tell us a little bit about where you were when the production process, when lockdown restrictions hit you a year ago.
Hello. So when lockdown restrictions hit, we had been in pre-production for a couple of months, and we were working on designs and we were working on asset building. And then lockdown happened and all sent home. And it was actually, so it was before animation that we were, lockdown happened. So in a way, it was not lucky is not the right word, but it was a good thing that it was before animation, because we could start to think about what we needed to do and what we had to put in place.
Interesting. Now, did you have any concerns as the lockdown hit over how you'd be able to actually keep going and continue?
Well, the biggest concern we had at that moment was the casting was still happening. And so we knew that the voice records had to happen on time for us to be able to start animating on time. So that was the concern that we had. And we just worked together, Blue Zoo and Magic Light Pictures, we worked together to talk about, well, what scenarios can we put into place, knowing that there is going to be a bit of a delay, because, casting in lockdown, first lockdown was going to be tricky, and, had to find the right cast, had to get voice records started at the right point, but we knew there was going to be a delay. So we worked together, we looked at different scenarios, and we came up with a way of starting animation we kind of took a less prep time approach to it, so that we could get started in animation, but for it not to affect our delivery dates too much. So that's how we approached it.
Okay. So, of course, delivery dates must have been a big worry for you. What were the main differences that remote working brought to Pip and Posy?
The first main difference, I would say, is that we're working with an international team. So we have people animating who are from different parts of the world. That is something that wouldn't have happened pre-COVID. That's not how we were setting it up. But then as soon as this happened, it was something that became available because everybody was remote working from home. So we have animators around the world. And, I would say that's probably the most positive thing that's come out of it. Other differences were, where the studio is based in London, the clients, so Magic Light Pictures, weren't very far away from us. And it was going to be a case of being able to work in the studio together and them coming into the studio and seeing where we were at each stage. But that's something that obviously disappeared because we weren't there anymore. And there were ways around things like that. Like, for example, rather than looking at sets together in a meeting room on a screen, we do that on Zoom and share screens and look at how the sets were coming along, inside the characters' houses, and what could we change. And you'd actually watch the art director change things in front of your eyes on Zoom. So that was something that we would have done in a meeting room in the studio, but it was on Zoom and sharing screens. So it was just in a different way. And I think also one of the big differences is just when you're working remotely and you're not, animators aren't sitting next to each other, you don't share best practices in the same way. You'd have to book a call for that. Whereas kind of if you're sitting next to each other, it kind of organically happens where you share best practices, talk about how you're approaching something. And that's really difficult when you're working remotely.
Yeah. I mean, it's great that you're talking about people who work all over the world and stuff like that, but that must as well have its own problems. What problems did you come across with having to work remotely?
To be honest, I mean, one of the things I can think of, first of all, is time difference. So that's something that you just get used to. So, for example, one of our board artists is based in the US, and her first board briefing, I realised I booked in for 3 a.m. her time. And the good thing is I noticed it before it happened. So I was able to move it, and it's totally fine. And now all of those briefings happen in the afternoon because that's morning for her. So those time differences were the things that you had to kind of get used to. But then once you had, it's fine. Yeah,
definitely. And so you've made lots of different changes, found loads of new ways of working together to collaborate and make make the program happen. Do you think there are any lasting changes that you made that will continue moving forward as things become normal again?
I think working with contributors, artists and people outside of the UK will stay.
Okay.
Which is a really great thing.
Yeah, definitely. It means, you're getting resources from all over the world. You're getting input from all over the world. It keeps you as an international brand, really.
Yeah.
Definitely. Eve, thank you so much for taking part in this session and answering a few questions. Remember that if anyone is watching and wants to ask Eve a question, or any of our speakers today a question, just click on the question button and write them up in the question section. We're now going to move on from animation to live action and factual. And we'll be joined by Chris Rogers, the creative director of Fresh Start Media, who produced FYI for Sky Kids. Let's get a taste of what FYI have been up to over the last year.
FYI viewer Scarlett has joined us. Hey Scarlett, so how was your first day at school? Can you name some of the main differences that you noticed just as soon as you got there?
Well, obviously wearing a mask, I understand it's so important to keep everyone safe and it is really helping, but it's really annoying having to wear it all day because it's having to keep it on at all times except for when we're eating, which is really annoying. And another difference was the one-way system, so you have to go in a door and say that you forget something, you have to go all the way back around the school just to grab one thing, and also COVID test obviously was a massive difference.
Thank you so much, Scarlett. Bye.
Thank you.
So you had your first jab in February, right? So you had to go to Oxford for that. How did it go?
Really excited leading up to it, but rather nervous when I was pulling up to the car park. And then when I got inside, everyone was so nice and lovely. All the fears just went away.
Now we're going to visit Italy.
My name is Eleonora, I'm 15 years old and I come from Verona, Italy. The situation here has gotten worse. I have not left my house for anything. At the beginning that drove me really crazy, but then I started learning a new language by my own, Chinese.
And now to Algeria. I
am Achilles. I am 10 and I live in Algeria. Algeria has a curfew now because of the coronavirus. There are lots of new rules. It is very strict, but we are all doing our best. I am his twin brother Koseila. I am also 10. It is important to do activities to not get bored. We are spending our time drawing and studying, but the most important thing is that we are spending more time with our family at home.
Thanks for joining us, Chris. Lovely stuff you've been getting up to there at FYI. Take us back to March last year, though, and how quickly things changed for you guys.
Yeah, it was kind of like the last hurrah for our FYI Investigates documentary series and also for an episode of Kidversation, both spin-offs of FYI. We were filming in Brazil. COVID was kind of hitting the headlines at the time, but it wasn't a massive worry. When we left the UK, there was a handful of cases. There was one case in the whole of Brazil. By the time we left Brazil, there were thousands of cases in Brazil and the UK. And it was like the last hurrah of normality because it became very apparent we were heading into lockdown and we had to find a way to make a studio-based television program that relied on high-end film production every week. So it was 2 weeks of round the clock discussions. And the first thing was where we're going to get material from. If we can't go out filming, Sky News offered us access to all of their archive, their material that would still be coming in every week. So that was that problem sorted. We had material plus agencies as well. We have always used user-generated material. FYI is a platform for kids to report about their lives, but it was very obvious that we were going to have to rely on that even more. And our viewers and children around the world were going to become our reporters, our correspondents, telling us about their lives and what was going on in their country. The other problem was editing. We kind of all found a way through that fairly easily, thanks to systems like Microsoft Teams, where you can link up with a remote editor, see and hear everything they're doing. The big problem was, how do we get 4 presenters out of the studio together on screen, presenting the program, hearing each other in broadcast quality? We started looking at things like FaceTime, Zoom, Skype. The quality was either poor or the quality was good, but you couldn't record them individually, so you couldn't edit the links, you couldn't edit the conversations, you'd have literally 4 faces all the time. Yeah. Eventually, we went with Zoom. That was the best quality. And actually, by speaking directly to Zoom, we were able to find a way where we could individually record the kids, so we could edit the program and have them all up at the same time, and they could be directed to, and we had some kind of broadcast quality. And then we had graphics created where we could fit them into those boxes.
Wow, that's quite a process, and you've kind of inventing your own system. How were the first few episodes, first few shows?
Well, I think it's important to say that Sky Kids were absolutely committed to FYI staying on the air, because it felt like during lockdown, during a time of COVID, it was even more important that a program like FYI existed to inform children around the country. But it still had to look good. You know, it still had to look like a watchable program. We couldn't just get away with, oh, well, it's lockdown, so, you know, it's just going to look like what it looks like. And Sky was so committed that they actually commissioned us to make a special episode of FYI on top of the weekly show all about COVID. And this was all within the space of 2 to 3 weeks. So the way the show evolved is that we then, and I think we've got some slides of it that we can show you, we went from Zoom, which was very basic. Then we created a nice look so we could put the individual presenters into neon boxes. So at least it was a decent watch. That is the kind of end result that we ended up with. But it still wasn't perfect. You know, we wanted a program that didn't just look like lockdown TV. And that's when Sky Sports stepped in. I mean, Sky were just so committed to keeping the show on the air and looking good. And they'd invented a system called vMix. And vMix allowed us to record the kids, all the presenters from their homes at the same time with a vision mix box that the producer and director could control. And the presenters were fed directly into Sky Studios, straight into the system, and went straight into the edit suite, all at broadcast quality. So the simplest way to put it is it was like directing an outside broadcast with 4 contributors, plus viewers as well. We'd even tried getting the kids to record their links individually, and we directed them via their laptops on Zoom, but it took like 15 hours to get all the individual links into the system. I mean, we tried everything, and vMix is where it was still using vMix now, and we'll talk about this a bit later, but we're going to continue to use vMix because it is absolutely brilliant. And we created a slightly new look FYI that was basically a program that was presented and contributed to by our viewers via video conference. And you know what? That's how kids communicate. So it didn't look like lockdown TV. It looked like a TV show. And we were so excited about it that Sky Kids then invested in a revamp of the look of the show to make it look more permanent in nature. So the video conferencing elements of the show, which were very heavy, looked like they should be there. You know, it was right. This is how the show should look. This isn't just lockdown TV.
So after changing so many things and now you've got a new look show, did the actual content of the show itself change?
Well, we were able to do a lot of production, even though we were in lockdown safely. Luckily for us, a lot of our production had been done before lockdown happened. So our spin-off shows like Kidversation, our I Don't Get It News Explainers, FY Investigates, they were all ready to be delivered. A lot of it was in post, but we were able to continue to do that. So we had fantastic high-end content funded by the Youth Audience Content Fund from BFI as well, which was just brilliant. But we were able, kids are brilliant at making television, right? They're learning how to edit from the age of 9 in school. And we've always used viewer-generated content. We just relied more heavily on it. And so the show changed in the sense that we had more viewer-generated content, more viewers contributing to the show, talking about what was going on in their lives. And we just loved it. It just felt like it really had become a show that belonged to our viewers and not just Sky Kids. It was Sky Kids viewers as well. And the audience figures suggested they were loving it too.
Well, that's brought me nicely on to the next question. What was the response from everyone? What sort of things were you hearing about the new show and the new look and everything?
Well, I think the first thing that we were finding, I mean, the first reaction you see is the viewing figures. So something's going well. The second reaction was for the viewers themselves. They were loving it. They all wanted to be on the show. They had found a show that they could be on. It was more obvious it was a show that they could contribute to. But also the education sector came forward, and Sky, I think, made a fantastic decision. Sky Kids decided to give all of our Kidversation episodes, which are all about child rights, our FY Investigates documentaries, the weekly show, the I Don't Get Explainers, put it out there free for schools and parents to use for at-home learning with lesson plans as well. And they formed a partnership with First News. So the programme became more than just a weekly news show on Sky Kids and Sky News. It became an education resource at a time that parents and teachers were pulling their hair out and needed video content. And that's something that we're going to remain committed to. So, lockdown helped us in a way.
Well, this is the thing. In all kinds of situations, not just television, the adaptation of people has been really interesting to watch and interesting to see. Now, you've seen these changes. They've worked for you. And you mentioned it a little bit earlier on. Will things go back to normal? Or are you going to keep some of these changes?
We're going to keep some of these changes because Lucy Murphy, the head of Sky Kids, she feels, and she's right, that the way children communicate naturally is on social media, is on video conferencing, is via text. And we've always embraced that to a degree on the show, but we were forced to embrace it and even rely on it to make the show. And that is something that will continue post-lockdown and post-COVID. We will go back to the studio to a degree because it's nice to see the kids come together and get outside. But I think there'll be a lot of links from presenters and from viewers via video conferencing on vMix, either on location or at home. So it'll be a mix of the two. And I'm going to embarrass Ian France a little bit here, the commissioning editor of Sky Kids, because be careful what you wish for, right? There's a lesson here. Be careful what you wish for, because before COVID-19 was ever in our vocabulary, about a month or two before, Ian came up with an idea for an FY Investigates documentary on mental health, where the kids speak to each other via video conferencing, right? This is before lockdown ever happened.
Right.
And we thought, what a great idea. And we developed some amazing motion graphics, and the kids did actually connect on video conferencing, but we created these amazing motion graphics where you can zoom around the screen, and it makes it so watchable and not feel like a temporary fix. And we wanted to do that for mental health, because part of the problems for kids' mental health is social media, being online too much, not getting out enough. But also it's the way kids connect. And it was a really good device of being able to connect with kids all over the world instantly and have them on the program. And I think that FY Investigates, it was so great, but when it went out, every television program was kind of on video conferencing. But it's inspired us with what we can do, what we can achieve. And I think the look of that FY Investigates is the look we'll try and go for as FYI continues to grow, with a mix of studio and a lot of kids out and about on location as well, and being able to connect them. And that's something we're already bringing into the show. This week, we've got Ella, our presenter, reporting on Anne the elephant, who campaigners say is the country's loneliest elephant, all her own at Longleat. And the presenters on the video conferencing actually connect with Ella, who's on location and picks up. And I think we just want more of that. We want the kids out of the studio, maybe even away from video conferencing and connecting up. So it's definitely the way we're going to embrace it. And I think we've got a clip of that as well.
Hey everyone, how are you? Brady told me you were talking about mental health.
Yeah, we are. It's amazing that you've joined us. Why do you think poor mental health has become such a big issue with our generation?
I think there's so much pressure nowadays from social media and also friends and school. There just seems to be a lot of pressure placed on young people, and it can all get overwhelming.
And I know it's affected you in the past. Are you able to talk to us about it now?
Yeah, of course. So I had an eating disorder for 2 years, which kind of stemmed from being away from home without my mum for a period of time while I was filming. And with that came anxiety. I am now fully recovered from the eating disorder. I still get anxious every so often, but I'm a lot better than I was. And yeah, it's just, that's kind of what I've gone through, but I'm still always working on it.
Thank you very much, Chris, for joining us, and we'll see you at the end in the Q&A session. Make sure you're putting your questions into the Q&A box for us, and we'll be looking at those later on, and try and keep them about production in the COVID time, because we've got some experts here really who've literally gone through it and lived it, and it'd be lovely to hear what you would like to know from them. Let's move now from factual to drama. And when everybody else was trying to have their dramas put on hold for lockdown, our next guest decided to do the absolute opposite and create something brand new that reflected the situation everyone found themselves in. Let's take a look at the sinking ship YouTube drama, Lockdown.
Life in lockdown was new to us.
We thought things would be boring forever.
We were wrong.
What was that? Do murders ring doorbells?
We're about to find out.
I think my friend's in trouble.
This could be dangerous.
Wait, if they have your car, they have my phone too.
How do they know where I live?
Oh no.
What happened?
I'm going out there.
Did someone attack him?
What's he doing back there?
What is going on next door?
And we're joined now by Lockdown's creator and Saara, who plays Neera in the program. So we'll be getting a perspective from both sides of the camera of working under lockdown conditions for lockdown, during lockdown. Thank you both for joining us. Saara, just a quick question to start. What's your abiding impression of making lockdown under those strange conditions?
I think my impression of making lockdown under these conditions was just the power of creativity and the power of determination and everyone coming together in such a trying time. And JJ's determination to do the literal opposite thing to what everyone else was doing. While everyone else was sleeping in and baking bread and buying toilet paper off the shelves in every single grocery store, JJ thought to make a brand new show during lockdown. And I thought that was phenomenal.
Oh, thank you very much. We'll come back to you in a moment. JJ, let's go right back to the beginning. And why did you decide to make a series, 2 series it turned out, when everybody else was stopping production?
It kind of was a little bit of a double whammy. We were fortunate in that when the lockdown hit, we were just starting pre-production on the latest series, season of Odd Squad. And so we were able to fold that up pretty quickly. But what we didn't anticipate was that we had a huge amount of crew members that were waiting for that show to move through the pipeline, particularly our post team. Sinking Ship kind of operates as a mini studio system. And so, the thought of having to lose our editors because we couldn't, have work for them was first and foremost the main thinking. The other thing is, Sinking Ship prides itself on speaking up to our audience about issues that are happening today. To go from so much creative output each day to nothing felt really strange. And this massive situation that's happening, to not find a way to speak into that also was just, odd for us. So it was trying to find how could we come up with something that lived up to the production values and the story potential that we try to infuse into everything that we make, but still obviously produce it safely. That was really kind of the genesis.
Wow. And how quickly did it all come together as a production?
Probably faster than it should have, but YouTube, which has been such an incredible partner, I had a call scheduled with them to go over another project that was obviously going to be delayed, and kind of just pitch them the broad strokes of this idea. We wanted to find a little bit of escapism as well. So trying to find a narrative structure that gave you a little bit of action adventure, and also could feature a lot of different personalities to show how different kids were experiencing the lockdown and the pandemic. And I don't know, the one thing that I really like about, what this has done is I feel like the pretense is off between producers and networks. You know, you're pitching people, they're in their laundry room, we're all hiding from our children or dogs or whatever it might be. And so we just had this really like frank, honest conversation about wanting to say something and do something. And I remember like Nadine, who is the head of YouTube Families, like grabbing a pencil or a crayon and jotting out the numbers. And we really figured it out pretty quick. And from that moment, I think we were into production 3 weeks later.
Wow, that is rapid. Definitely quick.
Well, we weren't doing anything else. So we also were able to kind of all focus in.
I suppose when you look at it that way, yeah, I get what you mean.
Yeah.
What were the challenges with making a show where you couldn't be together?
Yeah, I mean, Saara could talk to this too. I think the thing that we wanted to make sure is that our performers did not have to focus on the technology side of things. And I'm sure a lot of the members can talk about, you know, how uploading footage and things like that. So we spent, you know, a couple of days trying to figure out how to make that process easy. We ended up using an app called Resilio, which allowed for, and Saara, you can talk to this, but as soon as you cut, it automatically uploaded the footage. So it took that data maintenance away. And as well, we had IT, yeah, which was amazing. And we could see what was coming in. And we had IT on the line at all times. We could literally access the computer and the cell phone that we provided each of our performers. But Saara, I think that mostly worked out, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it was a little scary just like being on my laptop and like some rando just being able to just like come in and like do anything on the laptop. But it made things very easy when things went wrong, to just have someone else take care of that, because that was definitely a worry at first and something I was definitely anxious about. But yeah, I think the crew was such a big help in making sure that everything ran smoothly despite not actually being there in person.
Yeah, and we tried to make it as normal as possible. Like we still had our DP on the line. We were talking about lighting. We had a support team and ADs. Like we did, obviously we were trying to keep as many jobs going as we could. But it still felt like a mini set, and we still tried to maintain the process and everything that we would do before, which was something that I think we all really missed, that camaraderie of creating and producing something and having, an idea or speaking to an issue was all sorely missed. So it was, I think whatever stumbles we had, we rolled through them for the greater good of just having that camaraderie back.
Nice. Now, Saara, what was it like making a TV show in your own house with your family member as a crew? I did a little bit of this, but I want to hear about your experience with it.
I need to say thank you to my family, even though nobody's here and can hear it. But they put up with a lot already and sacrificed a lot for me to fulfill my dreams. And they were definitely patient with this one. I mean, my brother always plays music throughout the house. He's a musician and he just blasts music all the time. And so for him not being able to blast music 24/7 was a huge sacrifice. And I just came into his room one day and I was like, so JJ has asked me to film this new show. I'm doing it. The house is now my film set. Sorry, when I say turn the music off, turn the music off.
Wow, the power that you
power. It was incredible. JJ, you gave me so much power. It was so lovely. But yeah, no, my family was awesome. I mean, my sister and my dad ended up being in the show, and that was
we couldn't bring in other actors, so we had to start to rely on the talent pool within the homes. Yeah.
It was so funny. It's so out of the ordinary for my family. Nobody else in my family is an artist, and my sister's in med school. She's not this type. And so, you just have this med student, trying to figure out how to act and asking me questions and trying to memorize lines. And my dad doing little voices in the background. Oh God, it was so funny. It was so many videos of it, and just it brought a lot of joy and a few arguments to my house, but it was lovely.
The thing is, it sounds like it was quite a bonding experience between you and your family. But how was it sort of getting to know your fellow cast members in a virtual world rather than meeting them right there on the set?
I mean, I knew a few of them beforehand. I mean, I had met Arista at a premiere for a show that I did. And I knew Tommaso from another show, and Edison. I don't even know if I met Edison in person actually, but just like because like
feels like you did now.
For sure. But we've really made an effort to get to know each other. I think I was the annoying one in the group that was always texting the group chat during like lunch breaks. And I was like, guys, do you want to get on like a Zoom meeting and have lunch together? Or like at one point we tried to play Minecraft all together. It was different, but I mean, we are kids of Gen Z and our phones are everything to us. So we know how to form those connections virtually. And it was definitely challenging. I mean, being on set and kind of having that second family is something that I enjoy a lot. And I think a lot of other actors would say the same. And your castmates kind of become that second family and become very close friends because you're always together. But I think we managed to do that virtually. And I ended up seeing them in person once, some of them. I mean, Edison was even in Texas, so like we couldn't even see him regardless. But we saw some of them safely during the summer when lockdown restrictions kind of subsided in Ontario, where we were, where I was filming from, and the majority of the castmates were filming from. And we saw each other safely from a distance then. And it was so weird. And I was like, oh my gosh, you guys have legs now. Like, this is so weird. It's not just like a box. But yeah, we tried our best to get to know each other. And I think we really did. It became a true bonding experience because I felt like we were the only people doing this at that time. And so we kind of relied on each other for that support.
Sounds like you had lots and lots of fun. And you ended up putting together a really, really quality program. Now, JJ, what was the reception to lockdown like when it arrived?
I mean, it was great. It was immediate. The thing that's incredible about being on YouTube is you can see people watching it right away. And that's also painful sometimes, but I think we hit 1 million views within a couple of weeks, and it just kind of sustained. And I think being able to track the mystery throughout the show was certainly helpful. I know that the kind of highly serialized aspect of it did well, and now we're starting to see that it's being picked up by some of the traditional networks around the world. So totally thrilled. It's definitely kind of a time capsule series, but it gives you this momentary look into what was happening for a lot of different people.
Do you think you're going to continue this kind of content when things return to normal?
No. No, I mean, I really appreciate, like Saara said, filming shows, it's a second family, and it's such a creative adventure. You just miss those moments, those lunches, those getting to know people. I really am super proud of this show. I love how far we pushed the technology. I love how much control had to be shared, and watching these performers take over the act of, setting up their lighting and coming up with cool shots, and us getting more and more confident with what we were doing. But I miss the ability to kind of customize it a little bit more or nuance it. There were moments that when they were filming on their cell phone, we weren't able to even see what they were getting. So you kind of had to just trust that it was what it was, which was also at the time like very liberating and fun. But I definitely miss, and having gotten back to, production altogether, there's just so much fun and camaraderie when you're all there in person.
Definitely, I can understand that. Fingers crossed, we're getting back to normal now, so you'll be back to the new normal very, very soon. JJ and Saara, thank you so much for taking part in today's session. Come back for questions at the end, and we will see you then. So it's time to go on to our final genre. We've been through quite a few, and now we come to preschool and event-based entertainment. And this is the story of going back to the drawing board to make a project work in a different way from the original intentions. Let's welcome Vanessa Amberleigh, who is genre lead of preschool at BBC Children's. Hi, Vanessa.
Hi, Nigel. How are you?
I'm really, really good. Thank you so much for joining us. Tell us a little bit about the original ambition for 2020's CBeebies Panto before COVID came along.
So the process is we basically start the script about a year before we actually film with it. Yeah. So January 2020, we actually were working on the script for our Christmas show 2020, which we film in a theatre October time. So the normal process is that our lovely CBeebies talent, and this is why it's become such an appointment to view project on CBeebies. And as you know, Nigel, do chip in because you'll be part of it, haven't you? You'll be part of quite a few of them. But our audience love seeing all the CBeebies talent together. It's a traditional panto style. It could be a child's first introduction to pantos and theatres. And we love seeing that audience. We love seeing that audience. And in 2019, we did Hansel and Gretel, and we did 4 performances. And in each performance, there were 1,850 people in the audience. So that's 7,300 people across the 4 performances. So, you know, it's a really important show for us, and it does so well on the channel, on iPlayer, and any grown-ups out there have probably seen all of our Christmas shows about 10,000 times. But so we had the script underway, and then come March, obviously, they said theatres were closing. But at that time, we thought, well, they might be opening again, you know, come July, September. Yeah, exactly. So we'd allocated our theatre, because theatres book up so far in advance. I mean, you know, you're talking sort of 2-3 years in advance. So when it sort of became apparent that, you know, theatres were closing down, a lot of the, locking down anyway, and a lot of the staff was going into furlough, we had to get to a point in the year where we had to go, do you know what, we've got to make this decision now. And we felt that the script that we had from that January of 2020 was so suitable for a theatre if we were going to do something different. And I was just thinking, at no point did we think we're not going to do a Christmas show. There was no point did we go, we're not going to do something special, which is like weird now just looking back on it. But I said by the beginning of June, we need to have made that decision whether we are going to go with going into a theatre or we're going to do something different. So we spoke to our commissioner and we decided that we were going to go with something different. So we've parked that show, and hopefully 2021 we will be in the theatre with that show. So then we kind of had to come up with something completely different. And because we were very conscious that, you know, theatres weren't necessarily going to be open, do we do it in a studio? How do we do it? How do we keep the cast safe? Because obviously we still wanted to have all of our lovely CBeebies on-screen talent there, but we wanted to keep them safe. There was the whole thing about props, set and what have you. So we got together with a group of writers on a Zoom writers' room, and they all sort of fed in ideas about what Christmas meant to them and everything. And myself and the producer, Anna Perrone, we decided that we'd quite like a little nod to things that had gone on, just to sort of say thank you. You know, the little viewers would just enjoy the story, but we kind of wanted to say to the grown-ups, you know, thank you. So we, as you know, Nigel, you were one of our space protectors. So, you know, we had a nod and a thanks to all those carers, all those people who are looking after the planet, all those people who are out there in, you know, in our communities. A thank you to teachers, a thank you to, you know, and a nod to not being able to see grandparents, and then also a nod to loneliness. So we came up with this story, which we then rehearsed, and everybody in their different groups came in separately to rehearsals. So Nigel, as a space protector with the lovely Rebecca Keatley, you came in, did your little choreography, and you went off, and then when you're in studio, you came in to did your bit in green screen. And there's quite a lot in the green screen that looks like people were together, and they weren't at all, you know, the magic of green screen, to be honest. But, you know, our priority was not just to, you know, give that show, but also to respect social distancing and also to keep our talent safe as well.
Definitely. It was a very different production that you came up with in the end. So let's have a little bit of a look at what you came up with.
Oh, hi! I'm Dilly Dally the Delivery Elf, and I'm travelling through Storyland to deliver a stocking full of presents in time for...
Yaddy-yod-ho-ho! In time for Christmas!
Quick! Quick!
I meet lots of new friends, and some of them need my help.
Woohoo!
Get ready for a magical, musical Christmas adventure!
Christmas in Storyland. Watch now on BBC iPlayer.
That was an absolutely fantastic production to be part of. Vanessa, can you tell us a little bit about what the big change was? Because we moved from the theatre and we moved kind of to a green screen, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So we decided that we were going to do it all on green screen, just because, again, it was that whole sort of safety side of things, and just to keep that magic. And we could have possibly gone into a theatre, and Nigel, we've just recently filmed our Easter show in a theatre and done it safely, and that. But these were early days, and we were having to make those conversations and having to make those decisions and have those conversations early on when we didn't know these things. And that's,
as you said, you had to make them so quickly because you wanted to know by June, and that's quick for you guys.
Totally. And so, we had to make those decisions with the knowledge that we had at the time. And I know, Nigel, you and I know we've just been filming something where we rehearsed with those proximity monitors.
Proximity devices. Wow, those things.
Where if you get within 2 meters of somebody, they go off and they sound like a duck. Yeah. Or even if you walk past a bin, they go off. But we didn't have them then. And so, we were going, how can we make this? How can we make that magic for our viewers? And we so wanted to give them something because, it's been such a difficult year for the little ones. I mean, if you're 4, a quarter of your life has been in this weird time. So, we feel it's our responsibility to still give them that magical story and that magical time at Christmas. So we filmed in green screen, and then we had our amazing animators do the backgrounds, and it was just ended up being so magical, and the lovely, lovely songs as well that we always have.
Yeah, it was very, very different. And I think we have a little bit of a behind the scenes video to show people how different it was from filming normally.
Hey guys, it's Andy here. I know we're looking a bit different, and that's because we're doing this year's Christmas show. Let me give you a quick sneaky peek. That's right, it's looking a little bit different, but it's going to be amazing.
I'm here behind the scenes, and Vienna is now going to sculpt my hair. Check this out. Look at this, folks. I am made up, hair done, ready to go.
So everyone's working really hard to give you and your family the Christmas treat that you deserve. A Christmas treat that you'll never forget. Happy Christmas!
Ah, memories that's bringing back. Lots of lovely memories. Was there anything, Vanessa, that you would have done differently if you'd planned the production in this way?
The quick answer is film it sooner, because obviously we were still working to the same schedule as if we'd filmed a live, version in the theatre.
In October, yeah.
Yeah, so, and because we had to put the animated backgrounds on and all that sort of thing, we would have just filmed it earlier.
Ah, okay. Yeah. Good choice. Very good choice. What was the response to the panto from the public, particularly in relation to the fact that there was a live show the previous year and people would have been expecting that?
Yeah, we were very conscious of that. We were really conscious of that. But do you know what? It was absolutely amazing. And I think, like I said at the beginning, is like at no point did we think we're not going to put the Christmas show on. be whatever, form that was going to be. And absolutely everybody loved it, and they so appreciated it. And, fingers crossed that 2021 we can get back into a theatre with an audience.
I've got everything crossed, Vanessa. Everything is crossed. Do you think that you'll ever consider doing a show in this way again?
Yeah, why not? The great thing is we've done it now. We know what the pitfalls are, and we know it works, and we know the audience love it. So my heart still absolutely loves the in the theatre ones because of what they offer and that introduction to theatre. But equally, this is a beautiful way of making shows as well.
Definitely. Thank you so much for joining us, Vanessa. Stick around. We're going to go into our Q&A session now. Yes, folks, we've heard from 4 amazing producers that have worked on productions over this COVID period and seen different ways that we have sort of overcome the problems. We'd love to have some questions from you guys, though. You can still post them in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. We've got about 10 minutes left. We're going to run a couple of minutes over, if that's okay with everyone, and try and get a few of your questions. And let's have a look. I know I've got 2 in there at the moment. I'm just going to bring one of them up now. Sophie would like to ask the speakers their advice on getting ideas to major organizations in a time like this. Ideas for programs, productions, the like. Who would like to take that first?
I'm happy to speak to that. I would say that we've always noticed a willingness from networks and producers to take informational meetings or especially with, new and up and coming talent. I would say especially now people seem to have a little more time to do those kind of meetings. So it's just about reaching out and respectfully following up, I think, is people do get busy or they miss things. But I think now is absolutely a time to get your ideas out there. This is certainly the golden era of producing. There's a different billion or $1 trillion company getting into content seemingly every week. So get out there and start pitching.
Yeah, I think I kind of agree with you there. I think, we're a small independent production company and the people that run it have got a vast amount of experience and contacts. But, commissioning editors are busy people and they've only got a certain amount of slates. And I think before lockdown, we're all a bit old school about it. You had to try and book in a meeting with a commissioning editor. You'd go to their office and chat to them and try and get their attention and sell your ideas. And I think now it was always there, but we've discovered video conferencing. And I think it means time management is going to be a lot easier for the people that do. You want to get their attention, right? And and it's very, very difficult when you've got to travel into London or Manchester or Salford or whatever. And I think Zoom technology is going to make it a lot easier to pitch. But I think certainly Fresh Start Media is thinking about how it pitches on Zoom. You've got the perfect opportunity there to create a presentation, on Zoom and show video clips and show your ideas so you can create a visual presentation. I've also noticed just recently that a few commissioning editors are now setting up regular Zoom chats in the diary every 6 weeks, every couple of months. And I think that's really important, particularly for the smaller indies who are just trying to make themselves more known and get their ideas more out there. It is all about contacts, but it's also about openness.
Thank you very much, Chris, for adding to that. And thank you to Sophie Wardlow, who asked the question. I've got another question here, and this one is for you, Vanessa. And it's a question, where do CBeebies look for their ideas? Because there's an increasing demand for diversity and inclusion. And have you ever considered a children's animation featuring disability inclusion?
Oh yes. So we have an in-house development team, and we have an arm that sort of specialises in animation and an arm that specialises in preschool as well. Where ideas come from, sometimes you just don't know. It could be, walking along a supermarket and just spotting something on a shelf and going, oh, maybe baked beans are the next big thing. I say that, and maybe they are going to be the next big thing. But, equally, Jojo and Gran Gran is an animation that we've just recently produced from in-house. And that was based on characters that somebody had created in a book, and we licensed the characters to create Jojo and Gran Gran. So yeah, and I think the diversity and inclusivity is so important, and that representation on screen is so important. Also, particularly for the little ones, I think they're non-judgmental at that age group, and I look after Something Special as well, where those kids just have the best time ever, and I think it's really important we represent absolutely everybody, because that's why we're here, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you wholeheartedly there. Thank you very much for that question, Leslie Berrington. I've got another question here from Betty in South Africa, who would like to ask, how hectic was it scripting and producing during lockdown? Who would like to answer that one?
I mean, I'll go. Yeah, it was a nightmare. I mean, it was, things were evolving. Like, we were trying to speak to what was happening, and knowing that, from shooting to delivery was, I think it was like 6 weeks or 6 or 7 weeks. And as you were going, things were either speeding up or happening in the world. I mean, there was obviously renewed focus in the States on social injustice, and we wanted to lean into that as well. So we just found we were constantly kind of going back into the edits and changing things so that when the show came out, it felt as current as it could possibly be. But that was absolutely a challenge. And, at the same time, honestly, all of us figuring out in our lives how to balance out, still producing this and servicing what was, a truly crazy and chaotic time. So it was a struggle, but such a nice creative outlet that I think that superseded whatever challenges or late night, overnight shooting we were doing.
Well, also, I'm just going to add to that. I think when you go into production, and everybody here knows this, that we're always evolving things. Whatever you do, you always go from episode 1 to episode 2. We've learned something. We're going to improve on it. From series 1 to series 2, we're going to improve on it. And I think maybe that's why, production has adapted so quickly during this time, because we're so used to doing it that, technology's adapted, so we adapt, and, things change, and you just have to come up with solutions so quickly. So, I think maybe, that is why there might have been a little blip where people have gone, oh my goodness, how could we make production? And then suddenly everyone's gone, right, let's come up with ideas, let's do it,
I agree too, because it's we problem solve every day when you're producing, whatever it is, and COVID just brought new things to solve. So yeah, I agree too.
I can add something interesting to that. We FYI, the weekly show, we had films coming in from all over the world, and we still do. We've just ran 2 films from Lebanon. We've ran films from Brazil. And Fresh Start Media, the company, we're about to make a global film with still a lot of COVID restrictions in place. We're going to be filming across every continent in the world over the next few months without actually traveling to those places, not just because of lockdown, but because of the carbon footprint that we don't want to create. And one device that we've come up with is to actually film the sequences that we want, and we send that storyboarded sequence filmed in somebody's living room or someone's garden, so they know exactly what we want on the ground. So it's basically remote production, but using video technology and video conferencing to direct from the UK a film crew in a favela in Brazil. And when you're working with really talented people, they know what you want, and you're kind of there with them all the time. We've even directed film crews on WhatsApp, from London. You can do it. It works as long as you get really good people who know what you want. But I think one of the most effective devices we found was to actually create sequences and film them here in the UK, send them over to the crew abroad, and then they recreate that in the actual location with the real people. Hard, but it works.
Thank you very much for all those answers, guys. Last question to squeeze in before we finish up, and it's from Sarah McCaffrey, and it's a good one. What has been the most costly part of the COVID protocols during this sort of period? And there are extra costs that people have to deal with.
The constant testing.
Yeah.
I mean, again, going back to Nigel, you've worked on a couple of our productions now, and there's the extra cost of testing people just to make sure that they're safe. And also, I think the added time as well. We've allowed extra time for everything. So that's obviously cost more as well, because as we know in production, time is money. But I think because of it, we've had to prioritize safety, and that has added to the budgets.
I've got something to add to that question if anyone wants to jump in. With your productions, did you have to pay for fail-safe mechanisms to be put in place? So say a cast member would go down with COVID, to get another cast member, did you have someone on standby, or different parts of your process? Did you have to have standby mechanisms that would cost the production?
I mean, I can say, certainly insurance costs are greater for us, but heading back into more traditional production, I think, to Vanessa's point, we're just being a little bit smarter in how we're shooting. We're not carrying scenes in the same way that we would. We're block shooting where we can. We're making sure that actors have finished at least that episode or that arc, where usually, we would be carrying pieces until the end of production. So it's not that we're prepared that if someone went down for a lengthy period of time, we would obviously be in trouble, but at least we have episodes complete versus, hanging elements.
Yeah, totally. Guys, I think that brings us to the end of our session. It's 4:04. I'd like to say a huge thank you to everyone who has been watching, to the people on the panel here that have shared some of their expert knowledge on ways that they've dealt with productions throughout COVID. Thanks to Eve, thanks to Chris, thanks to JJ, thanks to Saara, thanks to Vanessa. And also we'd like to thank Darren, Greg, and the CMC team, and all of our patron sponsors. Thank you all for watching, and we will hopefully see you very, very soon. You can watch this whole session again, along with over 70 other videos from CMC events on our YouTube channel. Darren is posting the link right now in the chat, so you'll be able to check that out. Coming up, our next spring webinar is on the 21st of April, and that will see CMC's very own China expert, Sarah Baines, curating a get-together of Chinese producers and platforms to find out the latest market conditions there and what they're looking for from the UK. That's followed on the next morning of the 22nd with the China exchange market. That's a great chance to actually meet potential partners or clients in China, as it's a series of prearranged one-on-one meetings. That was a thought to be of a lot of value when it happened at the CMC last year. So don't miss either of those, especially if you're thinking about working in or with China. We'll have more spring webinars to follow. And of course, CMC will be back in July. And we're looking for topic ideas for CMC right now. And volunteer producers as well. So check out the Get Involved page on the CMC website. Darren is posting that in the chat now as well. That's it, folks. We will see you next month in China.